And some things never change.
Stop it right now.
That's what I'm saying. Hey.
Yes, we're gonna work today. Oh my God.
I'm ready to go home.
Like,
can we leave now?
Look, I don't know. I heard some people had like videos and stuff. We're not doing all that today. I need to just go ahead and put my hair up.
Wait, we need our computers?
I don't know. Do we need it or no for your class?
Huh?
Do we need our electronics or no?
Yes.
Well,
And probably something to write with will be helpful. But that's up to you.
oh, she got a class set? Yes, she got. Wait, what?
A digital mirror?
Right? You can say anything. You can say anything. Okay.
What color you want?
Sandra's here. And Mom. And then I don't know. Okay.
See, this is why I did that.
Well, y'all tell Carson your name. She has to take attendance, so
I'm here.
if you'll tell her.
Loud mouth.
This is just not good.
I'm Jennifer Shaw.
Jennifer.
There. Tiffany Shaw. I love you. You got it.
Alan. Okay. Sandra Stocks.
Okay.
So we're waiting on like 4?
3. Frazier had to drive the bus after school, so I know that's going to hold her up.
Okay.
They called her last minute.
We're not going to stall for Jason Wilson.
I
And
just
who's
said
the other one? I don't know the other person.
You have to record this?
Is it recording now?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, God, I'm so sorry.
I think they can edit it.
We're just going to off next week. I know, right?
Okay. Well. All right, well, we can go ahead and get started. I'm actually Jessie. I teach high school social studies. This is my 8th year teaching. I'm going to be talking about data, more specifically what to do with data when you don't have data for a class. So being a social studies teacher, they dumped us several years ago. They don't have EOCs for us. They generally don't care about our scores. And so they said it was too expensive to test social studies, which I think we have seen the effects of not caring about social studies in real life. But because of that, we don't get a lot of the same data that math or English or science get. So I completed my national boards in 2019, and part of it was using data. And so I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what to do when I didn't have data. So I'm going to talk to you about what I did, and then I'm going to talk to you about having conferences with your kids and kind of putting some learning in their hands so that you can hopefully empower them and go from there. So our content objectives today, you should be able to identify various types of data available to you per student and prepare for conferences that will empower students to take ownership of their learning. Our language objectives are to collect and interpret data for one class, determine what data to use to support students in your classroom, and create conference forms for your classroom. Okay, so what data do we have? So we all have access to EVOS, and EVOS is sometimes a really scary place to go, especially like as a new teacher, it's really scary. But it's a web-based school improvement tool, and it tells us about supposed projected data on students. within that, depending on the student, you can find a lot of test scores and a lot of projections. Also, depending on grade level you teach, you're going to have more than other people might. So you can have EOG scores, which with COVID I'm now having to look at EOG scores. Never had to look at those before because I had English 2 and English 1 scores. You have ACT scores, some SAT. They do have Lexile levels in there, and I have noticed kind of a difference from their reading inventory level and their Lexile level is measured on actual English exams. So that might be something to look at, and projections for standardized tests that could be coming up. Schoolnet is another application we have. It is super fickle if you use it. I would not plan to sit down and use it during my planning period, because if you forget to hit save or you forget to select one box, everything you've done is gone. So it gives you amazing feedback and it gives you great data. There's also demographic data. It also makes charts. It breaks down every standard and pretty much every North Carolina document of standards is in there for you to test. And there's pretty much questions for at least all of our subjects, which is usually pretty hard to find. You get charts, you get proficiency. It will even break down like gender, race. It breaks down pretty much anything you want. In Schoolnet, this is where I do pre-test and post-tests to look at data. Of course, we have our reading inventory scores, which sometimes be good, sometimes not. I know I have kids who just tap, 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 and then put it up. I try to tell them that I'm going to use their score when I am making decisions for our class. So if they really read on a third grade level, then they're going to get third grade text, and that's not going to be fun for them. And so sometimes that helps. But obviously, the most important piece of data is going to come from you and what you witness every day and what you know about your kids. So what's the pro to not having data available to you specifically? We don't have a test to teach to, which has been really nice. I can kind of do what I want. So you do get more autonomy. You get time to focus on needs of your kids versus standards and having a test. I'm not really on a timeline. I'm not having to worry about what teachers teaching my subject are also doing in their rooms. Cons, sometimes I don't know what to do that day. Not always sure how to measure if they're getting it, and sometimes we get ignored. Admin don't get bonuses for our tests. They do for math tests. So sometimes math gets some funding and we won't, or math gets attention and we don't. So that's something that can be kind of a bummer. And then you have a bunch of data that you have to find a way to interpret on your own instead of having a graph that other teachers have. All right, so first thing we're going to do is create a class in EVOS and look at the data that you have, think about your students and what you know, and hopefully do a pre-conference planning. So you have a smart sheet on EVOS, and you have a pre-conference sheet. When you go to Rapid Identity, you can just pop in the EVOS down here. It should take you straight in. If you try to look at your reports, you have to log in. But to do most of this, you shouldn't. So when you get in on the front page, it shows my school, and it shows any test that I want to look at, and it shows the last 3 years. It shows kind of where we have growth, where we don't, and where we've exceeded growth. EVOS is really good at explaining what every indicator means. They have some really good videos that are helpful too. Kathy Williams is also really helpful. If you want to know anything about data, she will talk to you about data. And Patrick Green at my school really likes data. He will talk to you about data, like more than you really want to. I'm not a numbers person. I don't do this because I like numbers. I do this because I want to see like growth in my kids. So that's on the main page. And you can go up here to reports, and like here's all the different reports you can get. That would be like your personal report if you get reports. But what we would want to do is go over to student search, and it's kind of fickle. So you would want to just probably type in a last name, and then you'll get a list of kids at your school. So this student is in my first period, so I'm going to click on him, and I'll be able to go ahead and look at his scores. So I have some NCFEs available and EOGs available on him. Report-wise, I have projections on these exams. So I want to look at his English 2. And I look at English 2 because I generally teach sophomores, and they're also taking English 2. And so if they're not projected to do well on a reading exam, which is primarily English 2, then I don't think they're going to do well in a class full of reading historical documents. So that's why I go to English 2. But if you're science, you could go to bio or whatever you have available. And I see that he's projected in the 11th percentile. And again, percentiles are just observations if the average work continues. If the teachers continue to teach and he continues to perform the way he's performing, this is where he's expected to land when he takes English 2. He has not taken it yet, so there's no actual score for him. There's only a 1.6% chance he'll hit a level 3, which is considered proficient, like the lowest that they measure. A level 1 and 2 would be considered not proficient, or below proficient in reading. A level 3 indicates that they have some grasp, but would need supports in the classroom. So I know that with English 2, he would need reading support. So I'm going to know that in my class he's going to need reading support. We're not going to get here. And then there's some, let's see what else he has. Ooh. Want to go. And what you can do though is you can add them, you can create reports. So I created a report. So you would go to create a new report, and you can add all of your students. So here's my entire first period. If I want to look at all of them in one place, which is distressing, because I have one, like, it's distressing. So what I can do here is then pick a projection for all of them at one time. It's not going to help me. Let's see here. Who's projected to hit a 3 on the English 2 exam? And here's what that looks like. So we have a like 72.3%. So if I click on Tyson, hello, and I go to his English 2, he's up here, projected to hit between a 3 and a 4, and he's pretty likely going to do that. Now, here's where you come in, because I know that he could probably get closer to a 4, because if he's going to hit a 3, it's because he's going to do the bare minimum, and so he can take a nap or play on his iPad. So these are kinds of the things. And it also gives you a really good outlook on the variety you have in your class. Where I have a 1.6 probability here, an 87.6 here, 90.2 here. Jose is actually, he's already taken it. He's a senior. COVID got him a little mixed up last year. He took it, he scored a level 4, which indicates that he has a very good grasp and would not need reading support. So, and I have like a 3.3 down here, 0.1. So, that's one class and their projections on English 2. So, that gives me one place that I can look. And I've already got their reading scores printed out, and I would have created a pretest in Schoolnet. So how will I plan for a conference with my kids? Just to keep in mind some things about the data. Conversion is different and changes depending on the standards. They look at bias and standard errors in EOCs. They don't do that with NCFEs, but they do curves in CFEs. Depending on the standards, can affect your scores. This morning I went in to look at EOC scores for English 2, and some of them aren't there. And I emailed Kathy, she doesn't know why. Some don't test well and don't try. They're just data points. But your conferences are going to be the most important thing. So, when I'm planning for a conference, really what I'm doing when I am looking at that data is I am looking at this sheet and I'm taking notes. So this is Zy Thomas's sheet. The first student I showed you, I put in his reading inventory score. When we took it in September, he got a 684, which lands him at a grade 3. And I put his non-proficient prediction for English 2. Then I also make other notes. I wouldn't show him this. I wouldn't say these things to him. They're just for me to know when I go into a conversation with him. But when I sit down with him, I'll have our conference sheet. And what I do is I get my kids to do something independently, and they pull up the sheet with me and we talk. I don't say, you scored a 19 on your pre-assessment. Like, I just will point to it. I say, this is what you got. This is what you were predicted to get, or what have you. And then we choose a goal together. It has to be realistic. I can't tell him to sit down and expect to get a 60 on his next exam. I know he won't. I know that I'm going to put a reading test in front of him, and I know that he can't read. So telling him that's not fair. And it's setting him up so that when he gets his score back and we have our next conference, he's going to feel like he failed. And this is already a child that feels like he's failed. And so we really might set a goal for him to score 25. We might do that. But that gives me the ability to celebrate that success with him when he does it and to boost his confidence. And then maybe the next time we can shoot for a 30, because I will have been working on targeted interventions with him in class daily, because I know that that's what he needs every day. So I have them mark if they met their goal or not, and I have them put an area that they excelled in. So even if it's something silly like I excelled in choosing one to mark out every time, or I didn't choose C every answer, like anything that they think they did well, and one thing they think they need to, that they struggled on. And what's really cool are the conversations you have during these conferences, because I think sometimes we forget to talk to them about their learning, and to hear what they have to say about their learning. And when you have these conversations, they're telling you right then, well, I can't do this, or this was really hard for me. I didn't understand how to answer that question. And it's not like the same kid that comes up to me every day and goes, I don't understand this, and just does it so that I'll do it for him. And then I have him choose one thing that he's going to focus on until the next assessment. Is he going to work on content, answer strategies, attention, or time? For him, probably we would need to work on attention.
You're going to, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. So you're going to choose one of the 5?
Yes.
Not one from each category?
No.
Okay.
We are choosing one of the 5. And if 1 through 4 isn't something that he and I think he needs to work on, we can come up with something else. And we'll put his goal at the bottom, and we'll put something that I need to do too. Whether that's, I write out vocab words for him, or I remind him an extra time to put his iPad away, whatever it may be, so that he feels that I have some responsibility and he has responsibility, and we've both taken ownership of him getting to his next goal. Yeah.
So is this a student that's already receiving services? I mean, who's that low?
This student is, yes.
Okay. So this is in addition to their services?
Yes. His services,
Just reading and math, probably.
he is an IEP student. He has like separate settings. He does stay after with me some. Yes, he won't ask though. I mean, you know that, like at the high school level, they don't ask. And right now, separate setting is really hard at the high school, because we don't have anywhere to put them. So, that's hard.
That particular student too, you gotta think they're future ready, so at the high school, most future ready students are only reading and math. So yes, history is reading, but he doesn't specifically get service in history. He just gets service in that reading portion. So that could be another.
Yeah, he does. Yeah. And like, so that would be him. And we would have that conversation. But I also am going to have a very different conversation when Jose comes and sits with me. And so, Jose,
Floats all boats, so I can see where
yeah.
setting a very tangible, reachable would entice this young man.
Right.
The 25 doesn't sound like,
No.
success, but for him it is. Right.
Yeah. And when he stays after with me, I have to tell him those things. I have to say to him, you have to complete these 5 boxes, and that's going to put us here. If you do these 5 boxes and we get here, that's what this is going to look like. And he can do that, and we're very successful that way. In class, if I'm giving an assignment, we're not doing it. There's
He's
no,
engaged, you know, misbehaving,
yeah. When Jose sits down with me, I'm going to have his 1300 SRI score in front of me. He's, level 4 in his English 2. He's going to have scored a 75 on his pre-assessment. So before I've ever taught him, he's already answering questions. So what's your goal going to be? And his, I might make a lot bigger. I had a student, one of my favorite stories from doing this is I had a student that he just wouldn't do. Like, he just wouldn't. And I told him, I said, we're setting your end of grade, like, NCFE score is going to be a 60. I don't care, like, how we're doing it, we're going to get a 60. And I told him every day, we talked about it, like, the morning of, I'm like, we're getting a 60. And we got a 60. And we're like in the hallway, like we are excited for that 60. And I mean, even now when I see him, it's like we still have that like excitement over a 60. But he knew, like he had never passed a history exam. So just setting that goal and making him believe in himself and telling him and checking on him and the accountability got him there. And he told me, I really tried today. Like, I got tired, but I kept trying. And, like, that's all I needed him to do. And so his goal might be different. And then I have one that I want to talk about because here's that whole, you're a teacher and you're going to know differently. Student C is a 504 student. His reading inventory is 871, so it's a grade 5. He's projected to also score below proficient. But talking to him, knowing him, I know that this is not him. So we're going to sit down and we're going to not really focus on this at all. It's going to be more about, so how do you think you did on this? And like he likes history and he pays attention in history. And so this isn't going to work as well for him. But what I know about him is. So that's where you come into play there. I mean, that student has an A in my class, is not struggling at all, is doing fine. So how does this look afterwards? So when you have a conference, my pre-assessment data before our conferences and before I taught the module, 4.8% were proficient. My average score was a 40.5. They had the most challenge on my 4.2 standards, with 23.8% being proficient, and they were most successful with my 5.1 standard, to 71.4 being proficient. After conferences and after teaching, I get 40% proficient, 55.3 average score, which is not great, but standard proficiency increased to 46.3 from 23.8, and those heathens went down on 5.1 to 69%, so probably one kid answered differently. So what does that tell me? How do I reflect on that? I think that conferences matter. I think that talking about the data matters, and I think that knowing where they struggle matters. I also know myself, I love talking about freedom, ideology, and religion. I hate talking about the economic issues. Yeah, and like they hate learning about it. So I know too that this is a reflection of my teaching as well. So I created an entire activity about economic issues, and so I see that increases that. And I know that while I want to talk about those other things, I need to focus somewhere else. And so my kids leave knowing about economic issues and freedom ideology and religion. So do I need to, what am I going to sit down with them next? What are we going to revise? What are we going to set our next goals? What did I do? What do they need to do? Where do we go from here? And that's how that goes. And at the end of the slide are document links and my email.
So Jesse, do you give your pre-assessment before you have your student conference, or do you give your student conference before your pre-assessment?
I give my pre-assessment before.
So that way you have the data and things like that.
And I will put their pre-assessment score on the sheet. Now, the very first one we have is going to be pretty limited, but then once we've done it a couple of times, I'll have already have kind of some goals out. We'll come back and we'll say, okay, you scored your 27, that's great. And we'll be able to kind of talk about it from there. And I want to be super organized, and I want to keep up with it here. But it does feel like wading through weeds for a minute when you're trying to go through EVOS and you're trying to figure out what data to use. But I would suggest if you wanted to start just picking with one thing, even if it was an SRI score or if it was just a math score or whatever, just starting. Or even not even doing that, just going off what you know in your class and just starting with conferences. And then when you felt ready to engage in looking at data, because I'll be honest, I probably would not have looked at the data unless I had to for national boards. And national boards makes you a better teacher, and going through that process makes you a better teacher. And I feel like this made me a better teacher. And so now I want to continue using that practice. But beforehand, I would have been like, I don't have time for this. There's no time in the day. Right now, this is just the thought of trying to figure out how this would work in a classroom where I have 0.1s and I have 75s. I don't know how. I don't even know what these assessments would look like right now. I don't know what this. I don't know what's going on in the classroom right now. But I think that regardless, it still empowers the student, and it still says, this is who you are. This is where we are. What can we do to make it better? So, any questions? Okay. That's that. Yes, you are welcome. Thank you.